So legislature last year did do some pretty major changes to the murder statutes in Oregon. So we used to have ag murder and murder, and now we have ag murder, murder 1, murder 2.
At a recent local Public Safety Coordinating Council meeting, we heard from District Attorney Beth Heckert. She summarized several recent modifications to both major and minor laws in Oregon. One of those modifications was defined as new classifications of different types of murder. Keep watching to hear the summary and potential impacts of the changes.
So although we're in the midst of the 2020 session, this is the legislation from 19. So legislature last year did do some pretty major changes to the murder statutes in Oregon. So we used to have ag murder and murder, and now we have ag murder, murder 1, murder 2. So aggravated murder can only be now under the new legislation in 4 pretty restrictive circumstances. So one is it's premeditated intentional murder of 2 or more people under terroristic circumstances. Murder while confined as an inmate if the defendant was already convicted of aggravated murder, and then premeditated intentional murder of a child under 14, and premeditated intentional murder of a police officer, a correctional officer, a parole and probation officer. It's very limited on when it can apply. So aggravated murder is when you could get the death penalty in Oregon, and it'll be very limited under those 4 specific circumstances. The sentence for aggravated murder could be death. It also could be life without parole or life with the possibility of parole, which was the same that we had before. So murder in the first degree is like a whole list of things here. These were the things that used to be aggravated murder. So a murder for hire, you had a previous conviction for murder, you murdered more than one person in the same criminal episode, torture, the intentional killing of a child, a police officer, a juror, all of those things. And the sentence is, if you're 15 years or older, life with a minimum of 30. And if you're 18 years or older, it could be life without parole. But as I wrote here, it just says if the judge states reasons on the record. We don't have any direction as to what that means. What are those reasons going to be? So it's going to be up to the courts. Prosecutors will suggest reasons, and the courts will either adopt those as sufficient reasons to impose a life without parole sentence, and then that'll be again tested with the courts. So then murder in the second degree is basically what used to just be murder. So, and the sentence for that, if you're 15 and older, is life with 25, with a 25-year minimum. So this was a pretty big change to our legislation as far as murder goes. But we're kind of working through it, trying to figure out how it's going to apply, to the future cases. And like I said, we had a few cases that that changed what they were, and even just the mechanics of how do you change it from if you had charged murder before and now it's a murder in the second degree. It's really just a caption thing, but how do you actually change it? So we've been doing it by interlineation, I believe, is how we've done most of them with no objection from the defense. Stipulation, yeah. So, that shouldn't be any reason that the defense wouldn't stipulate to it. But again, it's like when you make kind of major changes to the criminal justice system, but with no manual as to how we're supposed to do those changes, and the legislature really not having a good understanding, I think, of how those mechanics work to do that.